Welcome to my channel. We're going to dive into Gene Key 36. It's the current sun transit, the current energies amplifying our planet right now. This one's called Darkening of the Light. And as I stepped outside the marina this morning and I look at the light intensely shining on one hill and then the darkening of that light on that mountain, I thought this was a perfect place to record today's contemplation. We'll journey through the bands of frequency. And for anybody who's new to the gene keys, there are 64 gene keys. They echo the 64 hexagrams of the ancient I Ching, the Book of Changes, as well as the 64 gates in human design, if you're into that, and the 64 codons that we have literally in our DNA. So I love these gene keys. It brings language to what's going on in our body. And you can look up your own hologenetic profile. It sort of gives you a map of what your awakening journey might look like, a pathway. But these 64 genes, we have all of them inside of us, no matter what gene keys you have in your profile. We have all of these archetypes within us. And this one in particular, Richard Rudd, is very vocal about reminding us of all of that. This darkening of the light is also known as the dark night of the soul, which every human will go through at some point in their life. And I love what Richard Rudd says. How wonderful would it be to know about this, like to be educated on this as a child? Although I sort of thought about this like with Disney movies, for example. Most Disney movies start off with some challenge. Often it's, losing the parents. The main character loses their parents. And if only there was some way that we could really understand this as children, that suffering isn't something we need to fear, and that suffering is something that is imparted onto us like victims. But at the shadow level of all of the gene keys, the shadow level represents our victim state of consciousness. This gene key shadow is called turbulence. The gift is humanity, and the siddhi, the highest expression, is compassion. And as with all the gene keys, the seed of the siddhi, the highest expression, is within the shadow. It always is. And so in this case, compassion is always there in the turbulence, in the suffering. But because we're in that lower state of consciousness, in the victimhood, we don't see that. We never see what's there. We never see the potential. And I wanted to introduce David Hawkins' scale of consciousness in this contemplation. It's something that we work with a lot at Flow Network. David Hawkins, The Power versus Force, and recently just was watching a video of another woman speak of it. And so it's fresh in my mind. And it's, if we look at the bands of frequency, the lower bands of shame and of guilt and of anger vibrate at a very low density. So that's the shadow realm. And those lower densities, they tend to have a downward spiral, and we can stay looped in those frequencies for lifetimes. And it takes courage to be able to, at some level, say, I am not a victim. I can see that I am suffering. I can see that there's challenging situations around me, and what's good about this? Or how did I contribute? How am I contributing based off of my vibration and my inherited DNA? Because, this isn't personal. All of this isn't personal. And so that courage allows us to get to a place of neutrality. At David Hawkins' scale of consciousness, in his book, he wrote about neutrality being a vibration that actually has an upward momentum. And so this is where we come into the gift frequency, where, as Richard Rudd states, this gift frequency is a big band of frequency. That is a journey of refinement. It doesn't mean we won't have challenges or we won't continue to suffer. But the challenge at the shadow level is overwhelm, the dilemma of this turbulence, this emotional turbulence that we have inside is overwhelmed. We are overwhelmed and our heart is shut down and we're staying stuck roundabout and continually attracting more turbulence in our life versus having the courage to no longer play the victim and own our stuff. And in owning our stuff is basically allowing the emotions to be and no longer judging them, blaming somebody else for them, projecting them onto somebody else, but we're owning our own feelings and we're simply allowing. That brings us into that neutrality and where we one day might be able to accept our emotions and accept our humanity, accept the journey of what it means to be human. And the suffering is there. And at the gift level, we are honoring the suffering. We're understanding that there's a alchemical force happening in this darkening of the light and going through this dark night of the soul where we are being pushed into the unknown, which is our true nature, truly is to be in the unknown, in the uncertainty. It is an illusion that we can have certainty in our life. And to stay stuck and comfortable in a known world is a disservice to our life, to our life force, to what it means to be human. And so embracing our humanity and what it means to be human with the messiness of the emotions and all of that. And that's where compassion, the highest level compassion comes, because we've gone through the journey of the dark night of the soul. And we've had this kind of moment of humbling, of humility, of recognition of what the point of life is. And, I love this idea of compassion. In the book, Richard Rudd speaks of the storm. Compassion is that essence or that flavor after a storm. We've had some crazy storms here in the marina with our house moving about on the sea, or you've been in a rainstorm or snowstorm and things are looking bleak and you're not it almost feels like, is it ever going to be calm again? And when the sun comes out and the wind calms and there's just that moment. I love to think of compassion like that, because I feel like compassion is sometimes a word that is hard to understand. I think it's particularly hard to understand if you haven't gone through a dark night of the soul. And I'd love to hear from you. What does compassion mean to you? Do you have examples of compassion or a person in your life that exudes that compassion? I'd love to hear. I love also what Richard Rudd says. Compassion is that only kind of energy out there that truly has no agenda. It's to be able to just sit in the presence of exactly what is happening in my life is what's meant to happen for my highest good. And I'm held in grace. And there is compassion. There is love holding me through this challenge or through these emotions. And so long as I don't attach to them, I let them flow through me. So long as I don't judge them for what is occurring, so long as I don't feel like a victim in my situation, a grace, a higher energy will lift me up and out and through the storm. And I think that compassion is something that is very much needed in these times where we are going through a collective darkening of the light, and compassion for ourselves and for others, to offer a smile, a remembrance of our humanity and what it means to be human. I'd love to hear from you if any of these themes are speaking to you right now as we are collectively going through this energy, and sending all my love to you. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.